Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, here for another enchanting evening of elegant wit and top-level philosophical discussions. But that guy's not here, so unfortunately, I'll be sitting in for this week, and we hope to have somebody like back there soon. Boy, I miss those hot mic jokes. You know, that was, I just remember before that show went about weren't able to keep it going with the NRA, weren't able to come to an agreement. And I remember just about a week or so before we got into those contract negotiations, they said, we don't think you should be doing this hot mic thing. And I just thought, the pop culture strikes again. It's my favorite part of the show. And anyway, I miss it terribly. I really do, because I could never really do them in advance. I'd usually just, I'm in the chair. We got 30 seconds, and I had to figure out something. But it was a fun way to make fun of the LA crowd. But in any event, here we are. So we're going to do part two of our computer gaming, video gaming, and we'll be doing questions this time because I think I did the rant the whole time last time. Dave Big Booty wants to know what my shirt says. It's an oldie but a goodie. It's now you may or may not remember that was probably around 2009-10. And it's faded quite a bit since then. It was for Right Network that Kelsey Grammer was involved with. And it never actually got off the ground. I think their distribution deal fell through. But I remember seeing their graphics and their layout and everything, especially when we were working at the previous establishment. And I thought, man, alive. These people really got it down. There was a trade show or something. Maybe it was at CPAC. It must have been it. And everywhere, these gray banners with this, and like I said, this is pretty faded now. There's just this electric orange. But this is an actual logo. Look. I mean, it's just cool. And it's been one of my favorite shirts ever. And I guess once again, just when things look like they're getting to be fun, there it goes. So anyway, here we are back in the world of computer games. I've been working on Unreal Engine 4 for the last week since we spoke last. It took 2 days to install this Sky plugin that does these photoreal clouds. I finally got that done. I've been working mostly on landscapes because that's still pretty easy. Hoping to have one rendered out tonight, and I set up the camera, and I set up the camera motion, and I previewed it, and everything looked great. And I go to make the cinematic, and it kept rendering a different viewport. I don't know why. I've done this in 7 or 8 different kinds of software before, and it just, I could not find how to get this thing to render the right viewport. Camera was moving in the previews. Everything in the previews looked good. You'd hit the render button, and then it would render something looking out the back window. I'm sure people that know what they're doing could have fixed that in 10 seconds, but it took me about 2.5 hours. Anyway, slow progress while we continue on waiting to get ourselves a hold of actual professionals. That said, these landscapes really look great, and after the last week when we did a little bit of machinima stuff, grabbing stuff from in-game, I thought, man, just why am I going to all this trouble? Why, geez, really, Bill? I mean, just grab it from the engine. Just do it. You do it now. And I thought about that a lot, and then I spent a couple of days, a couple minutes over the course of a couple of days, kind of tooling around on the various planetary landscapes in the Star Citizen world, and Then I looked at some renders that were photorealistic renders done with Unreal Engine 4, and there's just no comparison at all. None. So that's where we're going to be. I'd love to have Kelsey Grammer voice a character for me on Star Trek. Do I have that on? No, I got it on the other one. What was that? No, it doesn't matter. I was pulling some videos to put together for this kind of condensed, super condensed version of this pitch that I still have. I've got like a 15-minute version, and that's too long. And I've talked to a couple people about it, and they said, well, we'd like to know something. And, so I'm going to try and get this thing down to 7 minutes, 7 minutes, just bullet point after bullet point after bullet point. And I might go over that a little bit tonight. But while I was doing it, I was looking for examples of the latest renders that Unreal Engine was doing in terms of realism, and it was really, I found something really cool because I'd been thinking for quite a long time that this could be done. Mike Rowe, Border Jedi. Oh my God, Mike Rowe. I know Mike Rowe. Oh, he'd be fantastic. Wow. Anyway, so here's the thing. So I was looking for these animations and these really top end facial rigs and constant morph targets and all this nonsense. And I saw an animated 20-second head, and it's this really, really photorealistic, great looking black guy, and he's doing this thing. And I thought, what the hell do I know this from? And what he was doing was he was doing the Jack Nicholson thing from A Few Good Men, but the beautiful part of it was the actual recording. Times Judge for the win. What if Mike Rowe did an Aurora Republic episode of Dirty Space Jobs? That's just fantastic. That's bloody marvelous. Anyway, all of this to say that what happened was they had this really, really, really good-looking black guy, a real good photorealistic Unreal character, but they had lip synced him to Jack Nicholson. Just lifted the line out of the movie, deepened the voice just a little tiny bit, enough to get it to sound just a little bit. There's no question it's the lift from the movie. The cadence and everything's exactly the same. And so basically the way they got that done was somebody says, you can't handle the truth, and they're just lip syncing to the lines from the movie. But since the lines from the movie are pre-recorded, what they're really just doing is they're capturing the facial data, and so I saw this very, very believable, I want to say early 30s black man saying Jack Nicholson's lines, and the sync and everything on it was fantastic. So the good thing about this is, if you really think about it, you could get, I'm not making any promises of any kind at all, but some of these people I do know. I know Mike Rowe. I know Kelsey. I don't know Kelsey Grammer very well. I know Kevin Sorbo pretty well, and a few others, Gary Sinise and John Voight. And having been around this business for 10 years, there's a very, very, very big difference in terms of whether somebody can record something for you at their house versus them coming into a studio, sitting there, getting into the motion capture thing, doing all of this stuff. And it's a difference between 15 minutes of their time or half of their day or a full day, and that's a significant difference when you're dealing with people. So one possibility is to get one or two just really good actors, and mimics more than actors really. And then you basically would send out the script Virtually all of the people I know at that level have their own recording studios in-house. They're either doing Skype interviews or somebody needs something. Certainly the voiceover actors do, and they just record it. And I could send a script. They could do 1 or 2 reads. I don't have to be their director or anything. And then we would get that audio file. And then we'd hand it over to an actor. Ideally, we'd get an audio and video file, like a Skype file. And then the actor would just basically, somebody, inexpensive, could sit here and just practice until finally he was lip syncing with the movie, at which point you get the facial motion capture that you want. You put that into the engine and you use the original recording. And it's essentially, it's kind of the way they make musicals. It's probably not, I mean, most everybody knows that, I'm sure, that when they're watching a musical number like Greatest Showman or something like that, any kind of musical number, most people know that they're lip syncing, obviously. But what most people don't know is really, I mean, it's so obvious, but it just doesn't occur to most people. And that is, you have to finish the soundtrack, or damn near, before you start shooting the movie. Because when those people are on stage lip syncing, they're lip syncing to the music, and the music has to be more or less locked down and finished. So it's a very strange thing to see a movie set where they're shooting a musical, because you would just naturally think that all of the musical presence and all of that stuff would be there, but it's not. It's just a pretty crummy, sometimes just a boombox, And but when you put the two together, it's absolute magic. I did something, and I didn't move that either, did I? Wait a minute, I might have that. Hang on a second. I did something very, very simple, but really important. I think I might have that, actually. I can probably just drop this in pretty easy. And that is that this thing we did last week with the machinima, where I was talking out on the landing platforms at Port Olisar. I did something very, very simple. And what that was I put a radio filter on it. Where did I move it to? Did I put it on a floppy? I bet I did. I put it on, I think I put it on a flash drive. So I mean, that thing was 5 minutes. Wouldn't put you through that again, but I did a cut down to about 2 minutes. And just having that radio effect is amazing how much better, when I say better, I really mean more believable, simple things like that are, because you're watching, Scott has been here and he can testify to the state of this spotlessly clean desk. You're watching this video and you're seeing all this stuff going on and you're hearing stuff and it doesn't match. It just doesn't sound right. So when you can just put that, it's super easy to do. You just put that real thin, real tinny, well, where the hell are you? Where would I have put you? Oh, I put you on the Google Drive. That's where I put you. Hang on a second. So just by putting this tinny radio filter in there, it gets much more believable. And I did, like I say, just a super fast 2-minute cut, and I'll just grab it and chuck it up there because I don't have to do anything to it really. Just give me 1 second here. Unless it was cleaned off by, maybe it was. Gosh darn it! It's got to be here someplace. I don't. Yeah, I'd forgotten all about it. It should have been in my folder here, but apparently it is not. Oh well, I'll have it. I'll have it next week. But it was really cool. I've got a longer one, but I wanted to. Oh, there it is. There it is. Sorry. Here it is. So we're gonna do this. Excuse me for one moment while I launch a new scene, and hopefully it'll be worth it. And if it's not, then it's not. But it won't take very long. So give me 1 moment, and we'll see if we can get this done. So stay with us, and here we go. Yeah. this.
Hi everybody, I'm Bill Whittle here, standing in front of magnificent Port Olisar, here at the heart of the Stanton system. It's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live here. You. Okay. Nice job. Come here. Come on. Come over here. I don't know what's really going on. I just stuck here. Wondering what the hell's going on, and kind of, just curious about when I might be able to get the hell off of this damn rock. Oh, look, here goes somebody. Watch it, you knucklehead. That is a spaceship. It's a Mustang. I don't particularly like them, but, not everything for everybody. Somebody's going to get in that thing and fly away in just a moment. Here comes somebody. Oh, check it out. Here comes a pilot. I'll just wave to him even though he's behind me. Yes! That's the spirit. Get up there. Fight these guys. Kick their asses! Nope. Good luck out there. Go get him! Yes! So anyway, back to the show.
Not much, really. Doesn't take much to do it. My wife was so amused that I said, kick their asses. I was just, that was a case where there are just a bunch of preloaded motions like that, and I'm just tapping keys, and he just did that. He did the kind of the big fist pump kind of thing, and I just threw it in there. As I said, I think last week, our very own Foghorn F-16 demonstrated six of these. They're called emotes. They're pre-rendered animation files you hit the button and it will make your character do something that's visible to other characters. And they had a competition, and there were 2.2 million people signed up for Star Citizen, and Mr. Foghorn won. So he got to go direct some motion capture, and that was pretty cool. Source of great pride for us, as was our very own Lisa, who had never played a computer game in her life before a couple of months ago, getting out there and coming in second in the Great Daymar Rally, which was a race across the planet's surface. So anyway, we were having fun with that. So. That is pretty much that. So we're going to be talking about, we're going to do the questions from last week that we didn't get to do. I do want to talk for a minute about the new site and going forward, because a couple people have asked about it, and Scott's there and has done just astonishing. He's just done astonishing work. And normally I would tease him about that, but since he's not here, I can tell you he's done really great work. If needless to say, don't let it get back to him under any circumstances. So we're not just changing. We're not just. It's essentially up and running. And the rollout of this, because I'm a big showbiz guy, I like big rollouts. I like just big surprises. Ta-da! This is not a way to run a business, or certainly a way to run a website. I know he's here. I saw him earlier. No good for nothing. Get back to editing. And so I like the big reveal, the big surprise. And that didn't work out so well. So Scott's been doing the thing the right way and just getting it working. And then we invited a few people in, invited a few more people in, and a bunch more people in. And now it's pretty much open door over there. In the next couple of days, we will change the location so that it will live at billwhittle.com. the current website will stay at billwhittle.space, but that will just be for the transition period. And as I've said before, it's absolutely astonishing. You can sit in the on the website and watch the stream live and put together comments and questions in there. I have no doubt eventually I would we'll be moving pretty much everything to there. So here's what's going to happen. I know there's some people going to hear this and they're going to panic a little bit, but I just think it's just the realities of life today. The good news is we're not giving up the political stuff, needless to say, and I've got a couple of potential firewalls in the bag that I'd like to get up there and out there. But because of what's happening with YouTube and Facebook and all the rest of this, and all of their exceedingly successful efforts to cut our sources of revenue off, where we are going, again, hold on to your seatbelt here, but basically where we're going to be taking this thing is we're going to be producing content for members. And then we are going to do edited down 2 or 3 minute highlights. And I don't mean compressed highlights. I mean, here's a good 2 or 3 minutes from the right angle. Here's a good 2 or 3 minutes from Bill Whittle Now and so on. And we'll make those available on YouTube to the public. But, I spent 10 years concerned about how many views I could get. And after the course of about 10 years, I realized that, a couple thousand people, and most of them are watching this now, we're paying for videos that in aggregate have probably been seen by 80, 100 million people, something like that. Now, 30 million of those views is me checking the counters, but nevertheless, it's a pretty big deal. So we're going to set this thing up so that if you're a member, you go to the website, you not only get to see the videos at all their length, but we have an actual real community, which the Stratosphere Lounge crowd is the it's kind of always been the nucleus of that. But people will be able to put their own posts up. They've already done it. They'll be able to follow one another, chat with each other, connect with each other. You'll have all of your information, your credit card information, your picture profile, all of it will be right there. Victoria Pax mentions the key issue here, which is, well, if it's only members are the only ones who get to see the full content, isn't that kind of preaching to the choir? And the whole purpose of this is to get the message out there and the word out there. And I think that that's an excellent argument, and I have no doubt that when we have something we think is really solid, we'll put it out there. But we have to look at the world that we live in, and the world that we live in is a world where lots and lots and lots of people have been watching this for 10 years, and the internet is free and TV is free, so TV on the internet should be free, and it's not free. So it's going to make membership a lot more attractive. And since the stuff that we'll be putting out will be 3 minutes instead of 12 minutes, that should be enough to grab people's attention. Maybe we'll do the Scott's got it right. He said it's more like equipping and encouraging the choir to go out there and sing. And choir's been singing for a long time, and they had their little hat out there at Christmas Eve, and and just wasn't a whole lot of people chipping in hay pennies. So the 3 minute highlights of these shows should do better on YouTube than the 15 minutes versions do. And this is the reality of the word. This is it. As a couple people in the comment section are pointing out, it's a it is a 3-minute attention span out there, and that's really the main reason that I was able to make this decision and go with it, because to the degree that the entire purpose of the membership is to get the message out there, more people who are not already watching the shows or gotten the message, more people are going to see the best 3 minutes of a show than they are all 15 minutes of the show. So that's about it. Yeah, it's I know it's annoying to people, and I know it's frustrating, and not only frustrating. I know it's just actually a pain, and you have to get your credit card out, and you have to put this stuff in. It's much easier now than it was, but it's still not as easy as just clicking on things. But reality is reality, and it really is just that simple. We have had pretty much the same people watching. We made enough appeals to this mailing list of 14,000 people or something over the course of the last couple of years that really generated very little. Hardcore members came over, were here in the beginning, and many people came over from PJTV when PJTV closed. But PJTV had a large number of members because if you wanted to watch something on PJTV, you had to be a member to watch it. And I have been basically, here's my business model. Prior to doing this, my business model is convincing people to pay for something that's not only free to them but free to everybody else. The product is free, and it's difficult to find enough people who have that kind of vision about things. And when we were, before we got suppressed and our numbers were chopped in tenths, we used to routinely get 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 views. Now it's 20,000, 30,000 views. So it's just what we have to do. So let me see some here. That's an interesting question from Anchorman. I'll just read it in its entirety. Glenn Beck on a show today said that we have the facts behind us, but not a good story. The Democrats control the story. You've said this yourself many times, and making this move is going to stop your message from getting out there. We need to start controlling the narrative. Well, needless to say, Anchorman, we have looked at that argument very, very seriously. There are two missions really here. And when I started doing this, even back in the eject days, I thought my primary purpose was to try to change people's minds. But I discovered after a pretty short time that my primary purpose was to be handing out ammunition to the guys on our side. And 350, 400 firewall afterburners later, I've done a fair amount of that. To the degree that we're going to get new members out there, with these 3 minutes things will be shared, and we're going to obviously be having to bring back the firewalls because those are the things that got people's attentions. And I know I've got two of them that I could really much ready to just crank out and do. One of them is called White Johnny Can't Think, and those obviously will be out there for everybody. But this is the economy of the world that we're moving into, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I don't know what else to tell you. It is something like this, or else we have to either keep this thing going or we don't. And I don't suspect things are going to stay this way. But in any event, let's see here. I actually have to read these comments. These are important. Okay. Yeah, Scott's pretty much got that covered. So look, here's what we're doing. For people who want the full 15 minutes of stuff, who really understand the nuance of it, that's going to be available to members, and that's what they're paying for. And we're going to try to get as many members in there as we can. We have almost never anymore gotten below 10,000 views on Right Angles and Bill Whittle Nows, and those people are consistently watching the show. So, if we had that base audience as memberships, we could do firewalls a week, and we could also do most of this video game stuff if we were to be able to convert that. But so we are looking at the realities of the world where we're basically saying to ourselves, we need to build this community, and this community is then going to be able to take us to the places where we need to go. And when I hear that that your message is to get out there and change people's minds, I've been working on that message for a very long time, very long time. And when I say that, I mean for the last year and a half. And my ability to change people's minds is going to be dedicated largely to the video game messaging, because the people's minds whose need to be changed have a 3-minute attention span, and they want to watch lasers and drive around on planetary surfaces and blow people up with spaceships. So that's the reality of it. The stuff that we continue to do for the choir is there for the choir, because there's a lot of people out there that think that that like to hear how these values applied. Yes, Cheryl's right. It's the reality of the world. I mentioned on one of these shows, I think the last Bill Whittle we recorded, I said the reason that you should be able to, that you should become a member for, I think Scott said 33 cents a day, is because I am lowering the cost of your laundry detergent and your soda pop, and I'm lowering the cost of your potato chips and peanut butter and beer, because we used to think that television was free, but television wasn't free. Television was paid for by advertisers. And well, it's been a long time since I watched network TV. That idea that every 7 minutes somebody's going to come in and talk to me for 3 minutes is not only annoying, but if you think about it, what happens is Tide spends millions of dollars on advertising to put a commercial into the middle of Friends, let's say. And those millions and millions of dollars of advertising money that they spend are reflected in making the product a little more expensive. They didn't have to advertise, they could charge less for it. And since we are not being paid by Budweiser or Tide, that's money they don't have to spend, so actually we're keeping those costs low for you. We also have a tremendous library. It's just a huge vault of stuff. There's hundreds of these firewalls and afterburners, and one of the things we need to do is to be able to get the resources to get some editors here full time, and go back to these 8 or 9 minute firewalls and make here's 2 minutes on why the inner cities are so bad. Here's 2 minutes on education. Here's 2 minutes on whatever, and we kind of just repackage those and get those out there. So it's just a question of the changing environment and the changing world, and so Martin Archer says, I think this is just formatting the same stuff in different ways. I think you're not thinking outside the box, and doing cultural shows that are not primarily political is the way to bring more people in. I couldn't agree more, and that's why that's why we're going to go and do actual entertainment for young people, and that's where a great deal of my focus and effort has been. So I'm not only thinking outside the box, I'm thinking outside the box that the box came in. So there you go. What's all this stuff going on here? Yeah. So anyway, that's the plan. And as Times Judge is pointing out, even though he is a despicable miscreant, you just can't get the economics of it out of the way. If I could do this without any members at all, let me rephrase that. I love the members and I love having them here. If I could do it without having to charge memberships at all, I would do it. And if somebody were to come along and say, here's, couple $1 million, just put these things out there for free and don't worry about it, that would make me exceedingly happy. But that's not the case. And it's a product and it costs money, and large numbers of people have been basically consuming that product and not paying for it. And this is where it leaves us. So that's what we're going to do. We're not going to bottle the content up. We're not going to lock it up behind a paywall, but we are going to make sure that membership is worth something. So that's the basic overall plan. Now, if this turns out to be a catastrophic failure, the good news is that it'll be Scott's fault, and I will be able to basically blame that on him without groveling too much. I can get enraged and put up a quick title sequence and saying that the people responsible for sacking the previous people have been sacked. So that's where we are. That's what it is. That's what it's going to be, and we'll see how it goes. But one way it is going to go, we think, and Cheryl pointed that out, is that this new site is not just a new site. It is a community, and it is providing things that it really is. It's fellowship. It's people who are of a like mind talking to each other, and not just me. And I want to get Scott to do some more commentary. I'd like to get Zoe Rachel in to do commentary. I'd like to. One of the things we definitely have the ability to do right now with the website is, if any of you have something you want to write or something you want to link to, there's a way to do that. And so lots and lots of member generated content is coming in too, and that's why there's no picture of my smiling face on the website, because we're trying to broaden its appeal and have it be something that's for just more content. And we're putting out 10 shows a week right now, and we have to do this in order to get the resources to put out more. So that's basically it. Anyway, let's take a look at the questions that we swore we would answer last time. Who else from PJ? I just have to answer this. Who else from PJ Media would you want to bring in, even as guests? It was a pretty thin crowd of people who I personally liked. I've already, made an enormous compromise for the quality of the site by bringing Scott and Steve over. But I did that, frankly, out of, I almost said compassion, but it's closer to pity. Steve Cruiser was interesting. Steve Crowder was there for a little while. Alfonso Rachel, by far, I thought was the best piece there. There was that bald guy that did that show with a really good looking dude. I forget. Yeah, slipped my mind. And I'm looking back on it, and I can't think of just a whole lot of people there. So again, this is the reality of the world of today, and these are the rules that we have to play by. Tammy Bruce was very good too. Yes, yes. Tammy Bruce was I thought very interesting, and a couple of the guests we used to have on routinely were pretty neat too. Anyway, we're going to work it out. The main thing is these things are up and running, and that's basically it. Bring on Candace Owens. I did the first. I think I did the first on camera things that Candace Owens did. She was the first person to call in on those 60-second SmackDowns. But now TPUSA has got is basically getting an enormous production house. I mean, apparently just an enormous studio in Phoenix, and this is. I mean, I'm reading the comment section here, which I know is not really fair to the YouTube people, but I really don't know what else to do about it. I don't think anybody else does. It would be nice if there were, if over the course of these years we could find people who would really get behind this and spread the word. But one of the things that we found out and continue to find out is that conservatives just don't get it. They don't get it, and it's just incredibly frustrating. And just by happy coincidence, the hot mic example I gave at the beginning of the show is a great example of that. We're doing something really fun and cool, and it was a little thing, but it was a cool little thing. And then of course it's like next thing you know, you can't do something that interesting and that cool. And by the way, one of the things that I wanted, that I've heard about other people doing, and that is like these. I'd like to do this little historical. We're not really stepping back, by the way, Edward. We're stepping forward. We've been putting out more regular content over the last 4 months than we have ever done at any time here. But one of the things I'm interested in doing are I'd like to do little 10 or 15 minute favorite moment in history kind of things. This is. Some of them will be well known, others not so much. But like the first thing I'd do is Taffy 3, just immediately, and just because I love doing those kind of things, just for fun. But I happen to think the stuff we're doing at Bill Whittle now is really just important and cool. I mean, we spent 10 years, Scott and I and Steve and everybody else, Zoe, we spent 10 years working on understanding and explaining the philosophy, and what Bill Whittle now does, and what we want to do more of is basically saying, okay, now that we've got this understanding of what conservatism really is, we've collated it from so many different sources, that I love the idea that now we see that we've built this philosophy. I didn't build it. I didn't invent it. It's just, I understand it now. And I think it's interesting to have that philosophy, that political philosophy, not only questioned, but thrashed, just like, well, you say this. Yes, I say this. Well, what about this? Well, my answer to that is this. Aha, but that means that you're hypocritical about this. On the contrary, it's all completely consistent. And I love that show because since I don't know what's coming, I often surprise myself with the answers. And that is not bragging. That's just a question of me really just understanding and wanting to share with as many people as I can how consistent and moral and decent and productive and successful this conservative idea is. These ethical traps that pull progressives down on everything they do. Raise taxes, give me every tax deduction you can. Public schools only, send my kids to private schools. When you understand this philosophy, there's really nothing that Scott's been able to throw at me, and he's trying pretty hard, that has ever had me go, I guess I was wrong about that or hadn't thought about that. It's really just, there's a couple moments when I have to think about, well, where's the freedom here? And where's the decency and where's the common sense? And it's like, oh, okay, that's it. There it is. And we just talk it through sometimes. Many of the times we just, I'm just kind of hashing out in my head as we go. And Scott has the talent to ask those things that actual journalists used to do, which are probing questions and then follow-up questions. And if this philosophy is worth living, and it certainly should be worth defending, and defending it is fun. And that's that too. So, just to wrap this up, this aspect of it up, the world is changing. I can feel it in the air. I can smell it in the water. It's not the same world as 2009, 10, and 11. Everybody who's out there now, Crowder, Ben Shapiro, obviously Rush and Levin and Beck and everybody else they're not doing firewall type stuff. They're dealing with the issues of the day in a way that it kind of advances the philosophy. So that's basically it. I still have a couple good firewalls in me. I just basically got to the point for a while there. It's like I just don't know what to say about socialism that I haven't said already, and now I have some new things to say. So we'll be trotting those out in the not too distant future as well. And needless to say, they'll all go wide. And enough about flogging this dead horse into the ground. I'm looking forward to this community, and I'm looking forward to this sense of community. And even if it's just a few thousand people, the remnant is the remnant. And living in LA, I heard some things from a meeting I went to last weekend, a political meeting, local Republican meeting. And what I heard that is coming in California actually really genuinely scared me. I don't have all the details. This is from memory. But essentially, California allows vote harvesting, which means that on Election Day, the Democrats, Republicans too, but we don't know how to do these things because we have a certain core integrity. But it's possible in California for somebody at 5 o'clock to look down the rolls of voters, see who did not vote yet, go to that person's house with a ballot, have them fill out the ballot and sign it, and then the person that drove over with the ballot drives the ballot back and deposits it. And you know as well as I do that if somebody gets stuck in traffic, and it turns out that we had 5 or 6 state representatives and national representatives who are winning on election night, Republicans, and some of them by 14 points. And we find out 2 days later that they found all of these extra votes that all went to the Democrats. So it turned out we lost the elections after all. They're saying that is legal now. What I heard last weekend is, you just think about this for a minute. There's talk about by 2024 closing 75% of the polling stations. Think about the genius of this from the point of the left. If you eliminate 3/4 of the places where you can vote, you are essentially tripling or quadrupling the line at the places where you can vote. And you would ask yourself, well, why would anybody want to do that? Well, it's pretty simple, really. If all we did was just go and vote the way we used to, that's actually pretty difficult to steal. And so not only are they going to be saying, oh, no, we'll come over and pick up your vote, as if somebody's going to check that signature, as if somebody's going to check the signature. They come in with 100 votes, dump them on a table. They're all signed by different people, as if somebody's going to check and make sure that these are unique signatures. So it's just a way for Democrats to manufacture votes. And the genius of eliminating 3/4 of these polling places is that actual citizens like myself often can look. I'm voting no matter what, but just think about it. The people who are working can't afford to spend, instead of 2 hours, they can't afford to spend 6, 7 hours. And not only can't they afford it from work, but they're just not ready to go through the misery. So they'll do what everybody else is doing, which is mailing in the votes. So the period of the election, you can mail in votes for, I think they were saying 4 weeks or something. 4 weeks prior to the election, just mail them in. And if it turns out that a Republican happens to be ahead, well, we can fix that problem very easily by doing the old, what's his name? Al Franken trick. Hey, we found a whole box full of votes. It all went to Al Franken. We can't deny those people their voice. Furthermore, I heard that, I don't know if this has already passed. I think it has. Just listen to this. In California, you cannot perform any work for the state of California. I don't know if that means being hired by them, but it certainly means as a consultant. If you've got a paving company or something, the state of California is legally prohibited from using your services if you have ever been a member of the National Rifle Association, or if your company profited from slavery in any way. So you just think about that for a minute. It's the law here. It's the law. It's legal. These are the kind of issues now that need to be dealt with. These are the kind of issues that have to be challenged. And that makes it much more of a specific kind of a counterattack. It's not so much of a here's how much money the federal government spends. Here's eat the rich. Here's why we suck. Here's those days are kind of behind us now. We are really now dealing with a two-minute population span, attention span, and we're dealing with people who are in the government who are so sure of themselves that they have legally set up a system that guarantees that they will never lose another election again. And they wonder why we won't give up our AR-15s and our pistols. And then it's just a matter of time. We'll see it by the end of the decade. We'll probably see it by 2026. Without question, we'll see it by the end of when it's the end of the decade. I mean, the end of the 20s. We'll see it by the mid-20s certainly. It will be online voting. You will click a button, and your vote will go to a machine. And whether or not it's counted by whom, along what basis. There's no accountability. There's no paper trail. There's no anything. Stalin got it. He ought to know. He's a big socialist too. He's one of the greatest mass murderers in history. He said it doesn't matter who votes. It matters who counts the votes. So these are the things that we're facing now. We're facing governments, both state and federal governments, that are spending money like there's no tomorrow because they're convinced, because they're not worried about tomorrow. They're worried about today. So anyway, on that cheerful note, they are doing everything they can to make sure that the American people don't ever get to hear the other side of the story. The American people made the wrong choice in 2016 because there was somebody else out there telling them that Hillary was, maybe not as cool as people thought. And after losing in 2016, the left took a year to get over being stunned by it, 6 more months of temper tantrum. And then they realized, well, we just have to make sure that nobody hears about Hillary Clinton's emails, and nobody hears about Benghazi, and nobody hears about any of these things. We're just gonna shut them down, and that's what they're trying to do. And Alfonso Rachel is one of the great voices of conservatism. Used to be in a room filled with like a convention room, speaking to 300 or 400 people, and rocking the house. Now he's in the same hotel, and he's in the same room, but he's setting up tables and putting tablecloths on them and serving as a waiter. And that's what happens when your team decides not to pay for what they're getting. What do you say? I mean, I wish it was different, and it sounds depressing. It's certainly not cheerful, but I'm always come back to the remnant thing. I always come back to this idea that it's not the numbers of people, it's not the numbers of people, it's the quality of the people that matters. It's the quality. But when I found out that Zoe was waiting tables, Zoe was on Clavin's show a couple of days ago. Isn't that interesting? I heard that from him, and I just wanted to cry, because I heard it from him at a live event, and he was just, I've never seen him better. He was fantastic. So we'd like to get him in here as well, and spread the word and make that membership worth as much as possible, and then see if we can get more people to become members and keep this fire burning. That's the plan. All right, so moving on now. We'll definitely do some questions, because I'm basically blabbered on for another hour. Let's see what we got here. Okay, let's separate the Facebook panels and make everything possible to read on my tiny little monitor. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do that. Foghorn, I'll tell you what, Foghorn, let me, why don't we close with that? How about that? Foghorn has suggested that we play a video that was made by known miscreants and blowhards, and it's actually kind of fun. So we'll close with that, but I don't want to get to that right now. We'll run it just as we get done. Yeah, Martin Archer says he's depressed now. I'm not depressed, buddy. If I was depressed, I'd move to Montana and live on beans and buy ammo. We are doing this to keep the lights on here, and this video game thing. You know what? I'm going to just go ahead and give you the pitch for this, because I don't want to leave on this note. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'll still get the questions, so help me, I will. But here is why you should not despair, and here is why we're doing what we're doing. I used to have it on my desktop, and I don't know if it's still here. Let's see. This one I should have on the drive. Give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second, because this will actually cheers me up, but it's a question of, of vision. So hang on a second. It's, where did it go? Here. There it is. Okay, hang on, stand by, coming. Just pull this over here. And now I am going to make a new scene. It's going to take just a moment, so please forgive me. But this is worth looking at, so give me 1 moment. And I got to put my voice in there too. You are going to be. Well, apparently you can still hear me. That's good. So that'll save us a little bit of trouble. Here it comes. My entire pitch for this entire idea of this these kind of videos that I've been working on for so much time is based on this image that I'm about to show you, which is, come on now, right, you. Yep. Okay, here we go. Here's why you should not give up hope, and here's why I'm doing what we're doing, and here's why people that think, oh, Bill's backing off or retreating are understandably, but they're mistaken. So this is a map of what the country would look like if the vote was held tomorrow and only millennials voted. This is what happens if only millennials voted for president tomorrow. That's not what the country's going to be in 5 years or 10 years. It's not speculation. It's if you take people who are under 30, this is the results you get. And if you take white voters out of the equation, the entire map is blue. And the reason the map is blue is because they paid for it to be blue. They've spent tons and tons of money for it to be blue. And the reason it's blue is because they've understood that the best way to get people to vote the way they want to is for them to hypnotize you. And I always do this during live shows, and it's a fun thing to do. Hang on. You gotta let me get to the point here, guys. I'm just everybody just be cool. My job is to scare the crap out of you, and then tell you why maybe you shouldn't scare the crap out of you. Okay, so how many of you out there have ever been hypnotized? I ask this to a lot of the speaking engagements I do. How many of you out there have ever been hypnotized? In a room full of 200 people, you might have 4 or 5 people raise their hand. And my response to that is, unfortunately, you're wrong. You've all been hypnotized. Everybody who's watching the show right now has been hypnotized. And on some level, you're being hypnotized at this exact moment. You've been hypnotized hundreds of thousands of times. And you've been hypnotized, furthermore, you've paid people to hypnotize you. And this is not just a catchy phrase. I can prove it to you. Thank you, Eric. I'll start a couple sentences and you can finish them for me, okay? Because they've been hypnotically planted in your head. So I'll do it 2 or 3 times for different age groups. And here we go. Ready? I'm going to start a sentence. You finish it. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. You know, and everybody in the room goes, it's a plane. It's Superman. To which I respond, okay, well, did you have to think about that? Did you have to get out your smartphones? Did you have to check your notes? Did you have to go to the Superman website? Did you have to look up, George Reeve on YouTube? What was he said at the beginning of that show? No, you know it. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Superman stands for truth, justice, fill in the blank. Truth, justice, and the American way. You know this because you have been hypnotized by watching Superman. When you go to a movie theater and you sit in a dark room, it's Saturday afternoon, you got popcorn and a soda next to you, you're sitting in a room for 400 people, middle of the day, you're watching a vampire movie, and all of a sudden, this creature comes out of a shadow from a castle 200 years ago on the other side of the planet. Outsteps a creature that you know doesn't exist. You fully know that vampires don't exist, but it scares the living daylights. You jump out of your seat. Why? Well, because you're in a hypnotic state. It is hypnotism. It is hypnotism. Astronaut said that's not hypnotism. It absolutely is hypnotism. Hypnotism is the ability to get below your consciousness, to make an end run around your rational thinking, your cerebral cortex. It goes into a state, I'm not sure about this, I'm pretty sure it's theta waves, but you go into a state where you are no longer processing things with your brain. You are now have opened a pathway that goes directly into your subconscious. And you do it on purpose. It's called the willing suspension of disbelief. When you go to see a Star Wars movie or Lord of the Rings, you go into that movie knowing that you're going to see spaceships turning and banking in space, and you'll hear lasers, and you'll see that light travels slower than sound in space. You're going to see all of this stuff. You're going to see a guy who lives in people's dreams with knives for fingers. You're going to buy all of it. And when you go into that movie, you make a deal with the filmmakers to say, I am going to allow you to hypnotize me for 2 hours, but you better make it entertaining. And many of the times they do. So in a state of hypnosis, you watch movies, and maybe there'll be vampire movies, maybe there'll be something else. A country that spends hours and hours and hours a week being hypnotized by movies like It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is going to be very different than a country that is hypnotized by watching hours and hours and hours of shows like Empire, or movies like, oh God, it's hard to pick, one of the darkest ones, Redacted, or whatever the case may be. So when you watch a movie, you're hypnotized. When you watch TV, you're hypnotized. When you listen to music, you're being hypnotized. You have lowered your rationality to enjoy the entertainment. Now, here's the good news. That map is blue. Let's go back to the map. It's blue because they paid for it to be blue. And when I say they paid for it to be blue, I'm not talking about trivial things like George Soros putting in 33 billion, billion with a B, $33 billion into things like, I forget, Media Matters and all the rest of these things. That money that they spent is trivial. The money they spend on politics to make this map blue is trivial. The real money they spend to make this map blue, they paid for this map. They bought it. They bought it. And they paid for it with probably trillions of dollars, certainly hundreds of billions of dollars, of entertainment, music, movie, media, everything, all of it. It's all getting you when you have this hypnotic state of passivity and relaxation, and it's blue because they bought it. Now, that's the bad news. The bad news is that map is real. It's not a potential. It's not might happen someday. It's not here's how things are going to be in several years. This is today. So here's the good news. Take a look at it one more time. This Dark Order says remembering words is not hypnotism. No, everything that you got in Superman, everything that you got out of that show is exactly hypnotism. So here's the map. This is not how people pretend to vote. This is how millennials vote. If you look at how they vote, this is how they vote. If you ask millennials what they think, they will tell you that they're socialists and that they vote for Bernie Sanders. But if you ask them or look at them and find out what they do, then you're going to find some very interesting news here, because these millennials call themselves socialists, vote like socialists, but they're not socialists. They just think they are. And we can prove that very simply by just quickly marching through that ancient story I've told, which happens to be one of the most illuminating moments of my life. I go to Oberlin College. I'm looking at the students. They say they're socialists. I say, okay, socialists, bring down the smartphones. We'll take them downtown. We'll go to a pawn shop. We will we'll sell them. There's easily $2,000 worth of electronics here. And then we'll take $120 bills and we'll go around the streets of Cleveland and hand out money to homeless people who are in greater need than you, from each according to his ability to each according to his need. You've got smartphones. They don't have food. Bring them down and let's start redistributing some wealth. And none of them do it. None of them do it. None. And the reason they don't do it is because they're not socialists. That's why they don't do it. If you really lean on them, they'll say, this is my phone. And they're right. So why don't we go back to this map again? Here's young people in America. They vote for Bernie Sanders. They really do believe in socialism. But if you ask these people to give up their smartphones, they won't do it. And they won't do it because they want their property. They think that redistribution means taking other people's wealth and redistributing it to them. But when it comes time to redistribute their own wealth to other people, that's an entire nation full of rock-ribbed conservatives, William F. Buckley, every single one of them. So what that map is showing is it's showing what they say, it's showing what they think, It's even showing how they feel. But what it's not showing is what they actually do. This map is a picture of what they are pressured into thinking and believing, and they do it. But what does that blue map do? What do they actually do when you leave them alone for the few moments a day when they actually get left alone? What does that blue map do? Well, that blue map spends more and more and more time in video games every single day. And this is why I'm doing the work I'm doing here. Think about this. All of those people are spending more and more time in video games and the pop culture with things like Star Wars and fandom and Avengers and all the rest of it. They're spending more and more time in those worlds every single day. Why? Well, what do you do in a computer game? You do two things in a computer game. Virtually every single computer game out there, virtually without exception, consists of doing two things. You make money and you buy weapons. That's it. That's all. And I like to make money and buy weapons. And so what you find is that blue map of millennials has retreated from this world of the social justice warriors and immerses itself in a world where they get to act like conservatives. When I see elderly people who say, I just never see my grandson anymore, he's in his room playing computer games, and we can't get him away from him. We can't pry him out of there with a crowbar. I get to say to this veteran, I say, well, sir, I'd be willing to bet you a significant amount of money that your grandson is in there doing that, because right at this very second, he's shooting Nazis and jumping out of C-47s over Germany. Or he's fighting the Japs, or he's killing bad guys. But I guarantee you that he is not inside that room of his, stuck to a computer game where he gets to fill out forms and then go and march in a street protest in photorealistic graphics. A video game came out recently called Red Dead Redemption. It was an excellent game. People were really looking forward to it. Red Dead Redemption made $550 million in 3 days from millennials. Millennials spent $550 million so that they can play cowboys and Indians in peace. See how it works? See what's happening? I'm going to concentrate on the men. There's a similar story made for women, but let's just concentrate on the men. These young men are told that they're rapists. They're told that they're defective girls. They're told all of these things, and they're told it all the time. And they know how strong that peer pressure is. I felt how strong it is. And it pushes them into a world where they simply say, no, you're right. I'm a Christian, white, male, heterosexual. I'm sorry. I'll do whatever I can, to make up for it. And they believe this. And that's why the second that bell rings, or whatever, they're out of there like a shot. They're in a room. They turn on their computer. They got a can of Mountain Dew and some Doritos, and for the next 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, weekend, they're playing cowboys and Indians. They're playing soldiers. They're driving fast cars. They're blowing things up. They're chasing hot women. They're getting rewards like a pat on the back from father figures that they never had. They have escaped our world and gone into the world of computer games because they want to act like conservatives. We don't have to change their mind, don't have to change their behavior at all. They're already doing it. They're already doing it. And one of the reasons that the time is so ripe for us now is because the left is absolutely, absolutely furious. And for once, they're not furious with conservatives. They are furious with the left. Religion, we think religion has disappeared from this country. You can't make religion disappear. There is a religious need in everybody. So why aren't people going to church? Well, they're not going to church because they're told that being a Christian makes you a racist and a homophobe and all the rest of it. So where does their religious instincts and passions go? Well, for that generation, their religious motives are channeled into the one religion that we have in post-Christian America, and that is Star Wars. And Star Wars is not a movie for many of these millennials, not just a movie. Not just a series of movies. It's a religion. and it has all the aspects of a religion. You've got a Messiah figure. You've got the wise old prophet. You've got the father who is you got the good father in heaven. You got the bad father in hell. You've got afterlife, but most importantly, by far, what Star Wars does for people religiously is it gives them a code of behavior. The Jedi have a code. And the Jedi code is why you will see 38-year-old investment bankers who vote for Bernie Sanders with action figures of Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, and there's a little replica of an AT-AT walker, AT-AT walker from The Empire Strikes Back on their desk. They're grown children, but they are in this religion. And the left has destroyed this religion. It hasn't just made bad movies. The left went into Star Wars because you can't have individualism, you can't have bravery, you can't have courage, you can't go into a beat-up old TIE fighter and fight against the power of the state. That's not allowed. So you can't have this toxic masculinity, you can't have this bravery. So the left went into Star Wars, went chasing into it, and basically not just made a bad movie. Star Wars survived many bad movies. They went into Star Wars and deconstructed Star Wars. I might as well stay on this, and if we have to do a third part for the questions, it's fine. This is actually important. It's the most important work I do right now. They had to deconstruct Star Wars. And this is why the left, why the entire generation is so angry at them. You ask millennials anywhere, in any room, anywhere, just walk up to a microphone and just say one thing. Just say, who shot first? That room will immediately respond with, Han shot first. In the original Star Wars movie, Han Solo is cornered by Greedo at the bar. Greedo points a gun at him, leveled a gun right at his head, says, I'm going to take you back to Jabba the Hutt, where he's going to kill you, and I'm going to enjoy it. And Han Solo knows that he's not fooling around. So Han Solo tries to keep the conversation rolling, reaches underneath his underneath the desk, undoes his holster on his blaster, and when he's ready to be taken away and murdered by Greedo, he pulls the trigger and blows a hole in Greedo, blows a hole in the table, and Greedo falls down stone cold dead. And you see this in a movie theater, because I did see it in a movie theater in 1977. And people cheered. There's only three times I've ever seen people jump out of their chairs in a movie theater. That was one of them, and the other one belongs to Harrison Ford. That was the time that Indiana Jones used his gun on that guy with the swords. It was a visceral moment. It was visceral because you were so connected to this character in the state that you were in, this hypnotic state, that you had a sense of physical relief that this gun is no longer pointed at you, because the gun is pointed at you. So, no problem, except that in 97, 98, Lucas goes back, adds all these crappy special effects to the first movie, and then re-edits the scene where Greedo shoots first by a millisecond. So, if you get Star Wars now, it's like Greedo shoots and then Han shoots. Greedo, this professional bounty hunter who's sitting as far away from Han Solo as I am to you, has a gun pointed at him and misses, hits the wall, and then it's okay for Han to shoot because Han didn't shoot first. And when he was asked about this, George Lucas said, well, I just didn't want this guy to be a murderer. We have kids to worry about. I want to make a good, I want him to be the kind of kids that they should want to make heroes. And the guy is too stupid. He's not too stupid. He's too deluded. There's a difference. He's too stupid to realize that the second Greedo put that gun on Han Solo, now it's him or Han. When Greedo pulled the gun, if Greedo had never pulled the gun and Han just shot him, you could make a case that would really be morally objectionable. But when you've got a gun pointed right at you and a guy who tells you enthusiastically that he's going to take you to somebody who's going to have you tortured to death, and you shoot him, you basically in self-defense. He shot in self-defense. He shot first in self-defense. But they redid it. And even more disgusting is they destroyed every single copy. Well, when I destroyed it, they didn't release it again. You cannot find a version where Han shoots first unless you have a VHS copy of Star Wars from the 70s or 80s. They rewrote the history. And here's the problem for this generation that's raised on things like, Spider-Man and Avengers and Star Wars. They're fans. They have a religious connection to these things, a religious connection to them. There's more than just a movie they like. They get dressed up. They go to San Diego. They dress up in the costumes. It is their religious impulse. That's why they have little figures on their desk. People used to have figures of Jesus or crosses on the wall. Now they have figures of Yoda or Luke Skywalker or whatever the case may be. But the left went in there and they destroyed the religion. And the reason they were able to destroy the religion is because of something called canon. So in Scripture, especially with the Catholic Church, there was this idea of canon, canonical law. In other words, you can't just make up stuff about Christianity. It has to come from authority. So it has to be some sort of authoritarian, top down. The Pope says that this is the interpretation or whatever, and that means it's official, which means it's canon. Okay, C-A-N-O-N. It's canonical. Now, when you've got something like Star Wars, where you have hundreds of millions, billions of fans, and all of them want to contribute something, and one person wants to make Han Solo into a transvestite, and somebody else wants to make him into a Nazi or whatever, you have all of these fans with all these different opinions, and you have to have somebody who's going to be a judge or the referee, and the judge and the referee is Lucasfilms. You can have all the theories you want to, but once it appears in a movie or a video game or to some degree a book, then it's canon and it can't be changed. And so they went into the canon of the religion and rewrote it. They turned the Messiah, who was the most hopeful, optimistic, courageous young hero that we'd ever seen in movies, in the person of Luke Skywalker, who throws down his sword in the presence of a 7-foot-tall Nazi who has just destroyed entire planets because he still believes there's good in him. They turned that kid into a bitter, cranky, angry, murdering, lazy, cynical bastard. And when the Jedi books, which are the code that this entire generation lived by, are burned by Yoda, instead of throwing himself in the flames to try and save them, Yoda says, it's in the past, let it go. It's the past, it's time to move on. We don't need that. We don't need that old writing on scrolls anymore. It's time for a new order. And you see in that movie that, okay, you got the forces of darkness with Kylo Ren, you got the forces of good with Rey, and they end up shaking hands and saying the answer's somewhere in the middle, in that gray area between good and evil. And so good and evil disappears from Star Wars, and the emotional appeal of Star Wars disappears with it. And while they don't fully realize it, the millennials are out of their mind with rage because they destroyed their religion because they had the power of canon to do it. And to those people who say, but that's insane, it cost them billions of dollars. They've ruined the franchise. That's not. Ruining the franchise is not a bug, that's a feature. Ruining the franchise is what they're trying to do. They're fully conscious of this. When you have a fan base that's something like, I don't know what it is it 88% male, something like that? 88% white male? When you have a fan base like that and you show up at a convention and you've got the power to make the next Star Wars movie, which is going to determine canon, you're wearing a t-shirt that says the Force is female, you are basically telling 3/4 of your audience, kiss my ass. They destroyed it, and they destroyed it on purpose. And that's why the Solo movie tanked. It wasn't a bad movie. But there was an openly discussed, widely disseminated plan to boycott that movie out of anger at The Last Jedi. And then finally, some grown-ups whose business sense trumped their politics, certainly not the case for the director and the producer of these last movies, but then the big guys got involved, Bob Iger, and he's like, you've just ruined, a $20 billion franchise. Oh, I'm sorry. They did it on purpose. So then they start walking it back. Did the exact same thing with Star Trek, right? I mean, they did the same thing with Star Trek. Star Trek was about Captain Kirk. It was about a man making decisions who was responsible for everything on his own, and he is America. It's America on the bridge. He is the moral compass of the Federation, and the decisions he makes are moral decisions based on what Americans believe is true. And then you go through all these different iterations. Next Generation was extremely left-wing, but Discovery is canon. You can't get away from it. They inserted this monstrosity before Kirk arrived. And you've got Starfleet is now, it's run by fashion designers, and your hero is a real angry but very, very physically tough young black woman who was raised on Vulcan, and her job is to basically go around with other female commanders and tell men what jackasses they are, and to lecture them on things like this. So that's gone, and you've got this. Look, I've only been able to sit through 10 minutes of the entire Discovery first season. And you've got this thing called the Spore Drive, which is driven by a guy who's like this. He's on a cross, physically suffering to make the ship jump, while his boyfriend is standing there telling him how much he loves him. Okay, that's what Star Trek is now. And the Klingons are wearing their gold lame neck braces, and it's dead. It's gone. And for years, I thought, why would they do this? They're losing so much money. They don't care. They're making millions. They destroyed the franchise because the franchise was dangerous to them. All of the stuff you see in the back of me here is dangerous to them. See that? That's got to go. That's got to go. That's a guy with a gun and an education. And so that has to be destroyed. And there's been a little bit of pushback. Bob Iger got involved with Star Wars, and then on Star Trek they brought in Christopher Pike, and they still, he looks a lot more. Bringing Christopher Pike in a yellow jersey, by the way. So they're trying to steer this thing back into the realm of what the fans could tolerate, but I don't think it's going to work. So, millennials, go into computer games and watch these movies because it is a world where they get to act like conservatives. And entertainment, while Hollywood is incredibly left-leaning, Hollywood is so left-leaning that when a movie with Viggo Mortensen, who I remember in 2003 wearing a T-shirt that he'd hand-marked with a marker saying "No blood for oil" just before the Iraq invasion, he's now a reactionary racist. And they couldn't find Kevin Hart is not got the street cred because he's not left-wing enough to host the Oscars. Okay. So Hollywood is as left-wing as it can get. But entertainment is inherently conservative. It's always conservative. It is 100% conservative. Entertainment is conservative because James Bond does not confront the evil supervillain armed with a strongly worded letter from the United Nations and then drive off at a reasonable speed. They don't make movies about union leaders who go out and protest. They made one or two that were okay, but they were nothing like blockbuster hits. Entertainment is about a guy with a gun. Entertainment is about a guy with a gun in a fast car, rescuing the girl and fighting evil. And no matter how hard the left tries, they can't get away from that. So the map is blue because they're told that they're blue. They have no chance to not be blue. And all of the things they say, all the things they do, the way they vote, all of that. Blue as blue can be. It's the end of the country. It's the end of the country. And if it's the end of the country, it's the end of the world. That map is real. That's what's coming if somebody doesn't do something about it. Now, here's the really good news. We don't have to spend 40 years on this because, as I say in this pitch when I've got this thing really on my game, You cannot beat the biology out of people. You can tell young men all you want to that they're defective girls and that they're potential rapists and that they should not play with guns. And they will nod and oh, no, you're right. No, absolutely. And then the second they're alone, they will go into a world where they get to use all the guns they want to and all the explosives and drive as fast as they want to and chase these hot chicks. Because you can't beat the biology out of people. You just can't do it. They did a survey of these social justice warriors, these young women. Asked them what they thought of the men who were the feminists. What do they think about their woke men of their generation? They said, we're not really interested in them. It's because they're not men. There's only so much granola you can chew trying to get laid, but it doesn't work that way, fellas. You can be as down with the cause as you want to, but you're still pajama boy, sipping coffee out of a bowl, and you're not doing anything for these young women because you cannot beat the biology out of people. So, the conclusion of this is this. That map shows us how they vote. That map shows us how they think. But if you look at a map of what they do, it's red from sea to shining sea. They're not allowed to do these things in this world. And here's something else that you might want to think about. Especially when I talk to old people, they lament this so much. Oh, my son's lost. He's lost in the world of computer games. I haven't seen my nephew or my grandson. He's gone. He's lost to us. He's in this world. We can't pull him out. And it's all very sad. But the world, and I enjoy telling this to old people because I only had this insight 3-4 weeks ago. The world that your grandson has disappeared into and not come out is a world that is more real than this one. When I say more real, I don't mean it's more graphically real. I mean the world of computer games is more like reality than the world of the social justice warriors. You get rewarded for work. You have to defend yourself. You take risks. You reap rewards. You fail. You get a chance to start again. You can be as bad as you want to or as good as you want to. They are in there to live the lives that their grandparents led because it's the only place where they're allowed to. So when you look at what they do, they shoot Nazis and they do it 8 hours a day. And they spend $550 million to be cowboys and Indians. They spent $550 million in 3 days so that they can play cowboys and Indians. Because it's the only place where they can play cowboys and Indians. If they tried to play cowboys and Indians in the real world, the way that we used to do it, they would never hear the end of it, be the end of them. They would be absolutely destroyed by these weenies and these losers. So they go to a place where they can be soldiers and cowboys and all the rest of this stuff and get away with it. And that's why you can't pry them away from it because you cannot beat the biology out of people. So what this means is very simple. We do not have to change the way they think, and even better, we don't have to change the way they behave. They're already behaving like conservatives. They're already making money. Game like EVE Online has battles that cost hundreds of billions, trillions of in-game dollars, but when there's a gigantic EVE battle, somebody once said something like 2 or 3 million US dollars vaporized because spaceships were destroyed in EVE that they'd paid real dollars to the company to upgrade. So capitalism is in there and everything else, and they have money and resources, and they steal mining colonies. They just do what people do. So they behave like normal humans after all. And so why are they voting for Bernie? Well, they're voting for Bernie because they're told that they have to vote for Bernie. But this is where the final piece of not only good news but great news is. It took them 40 years of owning all of these hypnotic outlets to convince us that our biology is lying to us and that they were telling the truth. That's why they have to shut BillWhittle.com down and Daily Wire and Alfonso Rachel, because we just come out and say things that they know to be true. And here's what's interesting about that. If you have been lying to people for such a long time, when somebody speaks the truth out loud, it doesn't take 40 years. It just simply flips. It just plain shatters. The key story here, key fable, is that of the Emperor's New Clothes. So how does that work? Because there's something about the Emperor's New Clothes that I did not realize. I didn't really realize the point of it. Because when you hear the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, you think that, oh, it's about this stupid emperor and how vain he is. Ha ha ha, the joke's on him. But that's not the point. Here's the point. So just to recap, there's an emperor who's very vain and very stupid. And con men come to him and tell him that they've woven a fabric that is so unbelievably intricate and finely made that only people of utter refinement and great nobility can see it. And the king is very excited about this. Of course, he's the frickin' king. Let's see it. They go down and they open up the chest and they pull out the cloth and they show him nothing. And he's confused for a second, but as these guys say, you may see the way we've interwoven the gold and the blue and the shimmer that it gets is extremely delicate. Now the king is saying, wait a minute, this thing can only be seen by people who are very noble and courageous and good and smart, and I don't see it. Therefore, I am stupid or vain or bad. So what does the king do? Well, because he's a self-centered egomaniac who's trying to punch above his weight, he says, oh, you're right, that's incredible. He just goes along. Oh, absolutely, magnificent. In fact, it's so beautiful, I want you to make me a suit of these clothes right away. Well, it might be a little expensive, Your Majesty. Well, money's no object. What's it going to cost? It might cost 600 million gold pieces, which is pretty much all the money in the treasury, but he's going to spend it because he has to prove to people what a good king he is, and the way he can prove to other people what a good king he is by wearing this magnificent suit and going on a parade. So the con men go away. They come back 2 weeks later. They bring this kind of mannequin, and they start talking about all this stuff and how beautiful it is. And the king is really, oohing and eyeing. And during the intervening 2 weeks, everybody at the court has heard about this. Everybody knows that this cloth is coming. Everybody's looking forward to seeing the cloth. They're all abuzz. The whole town is just vibrating. Cannot wait to see this unbelievably beautiful, magically beautiful cloth. And so the king walks out of the inner chambers after he's been changed into his underwear. And he walks into the court, and everybody looks up. And nobody sees the cloth because there is no cloth there. But everybody makes the same exact assumption. Namely, I don't see the cloth. But I'm supposed to see the cloth because good people and brave people see the cloth. So I'm going to pretend to see the cloth because I don't want people thinking I'm an idiot. Oh, it's wonderful. But this is the point. This is the point, the entire point of the Emperor's New Clothes that most people don't get. Everybody is sending everybody else a signal that they see the cloth. In other words, when the king goes out for the big parade and there's 1,000 people, every single one of those 1,000 people doesn't see the cloth because the cloth's not there. And every single one of them makes the same mental calculations. I can't be seen to be that stupid or that base. Therefore, I am going to make an enthusiastic display of how wonderful the cloth is. And that person's enthusiastic display of how wonderful the cloth is influences the guy on the other side of the road by convincing him that he himself is insane because everybody else sees it and I don't. So this is how it works. Everybody thinks that they are alone. Hey, we're good today. Yeah, thanks a lot. Take care. Everybody thinks that they are the only person who doesn't see the cloth. But since they send out so many signals that they do, then that's the indication for other people to believe it. And it is called social proof. And the beautiful thing about social proof is this. You do not then have to go down and talk to every single person on the line and say, he's not wearing any clothes. When one little kid says, but he's not wearing any clothes, he's naked, what does that do? It gives everybody else permission. It gives them permission to admit what they knew was true, but which they were too afraid to admit because they were so afraid of the response of their neighbors. When the kid says that he's not wearing any clothes because the kid's too young to feel this peer pressure, if he was a teenager, he'd have seen it, by God. Then everybody else in the parade says, the kid says he's not wearing any clothes. I don't see him wearing any clothes either, because he's not wearing any clothes. He gives them permission. So these videos that we're doing are going to go into the computer game world. We're not making computer games. We're going to be producing videos and content that sits on top of Star Citizen, and then we'll do stuff that sits on top of Star Wars and sits on top of Star Trek. We're going to go right into the mainstream of the pop culture, which is where they are 8 hours a day playing conservative, and we're going to give them the social permission to do these things in the real world. We're going to say, no, it's not. It's not evil. It's awesome. Capitalism is great. And guns are good. And why would you go out there to fight a dragon or run a cargo run? Why would you do that without weaponry? Are you out of your mind? And no one is doing this. No one is doing this. Because nobody on our side gets it. But I get it. And you get it once it's explained to you. And the most satisfying thing about this whole thing is this. I have gone into any Tea Party event or Republican event is going to be older people. I mean, a young person in that room is in their 50s. It's 60s, 70s, and 80s. But I went to a group not too long ago, which was the oldest room that I've ever been in. I mean, these women were in their, the youngest ones were in their 80s. These were 80-year-old women, late 70s, 80s, and early 90-year-old women. And I made this pitch, and I told them about computer games, and I told them all this stuff. They've never seen a computer game. They don't have any idea what goes on in the computer game. But when I told them that their grandchildren are in their room because it's the only place where they're allowed to do the things that they themselves did when they were young, play cowboys and Indians and shoot Nazis, they suddenly get it. And a lot of these people are pensioners. We had donation envelopes on a table, and a number of people put in $2. And I was more touched by that than anything I think I've ever had happen to me. This is basically, here's all the money I have. So this is where I'm trying to take it. I'm trying to put a virus into the bloodstream and not just leave the medicine on the sidewalk and hope that somebody takes it. Speaking of medicine, this is how I usually end this thing up. If you have a dog that's sick and your dog needs antibiotics, and it's a big pill and it tastes nasty, but your dog has to take it repeatedly, there are two ways that you can get that dog to take the pill. You can do it the Republican way, which is to grab him by his collar, wedge him firmly between your knees with one hand on the collar until you've absolutely got him and he's panicking and screaming, and then you reach down to this dog and you pry his jaws open with all the strength you have, and while you're prying his jaw open, you shove this pill down his throat and you close his mouth and he's gotten his medicine. And that's how Republicans get medicine to people. They think that the way to get medicine into young people is to grab them by the collar, lock them down, pry their mouths open, and make them listen to Thomas Sowell for 3 hours or Jordan Peterson or whatever, and then they'll get it. But it doesn't work that way. The dog has that experience and the dog is gone, and you will have a hard time getting the dog to do it again, and every time you do it, the dog will get more and more suspicious and harder and harder and fight harder and harder and harder. That's the Republican way of getting the message out there. The Democrat method of getting that dog to take that pill is to take the same pill and to wrap it in bacon. A lot of bacon. And then, instead of having to ram it down the dog's throat, the dog will eat the pill out of your hand. And once he's wolfed down that medicine, he will come back to you and beg you for some more medicine. And he will continue to do this forever. It's the bacon. And that's what we're doing. I've been standing in front of a burning lake of fire and in front of a virtual set, laying out these principles and talking to people's heads. The left has been getting them in dark rooms, they're fully relaxed, and hypnotizing them into believing what they think they should believe, but they don't. They don't believe in wealth redistribution because they don't redistribute their own wealth. And they don't believe in sharing because they don't go and see movies about documentaries about the labor movement. They go and see movies about heroes in fast cars driving guns and flying through the air and blowing things up. So we are going to go where they are. We're going to use the language that they're speaking, and we are going to give them the medicine inside a dog treat. They're never going to know they get the medicine. And the best part of all is that these Bernie Sanders socialists are going to start knocking on our doors, wondering when the next pill is available. Cheryl brings up the question that I've heard a few times. This applies mostly to men, and you're playing games like Star Citizen and Call of Duty and all the rest of it. How does it affect women? And the answer is the way that we're going to reach young women. Foghorn says 46% of gamers are women. It's a much bigger number, but I don't think their dynamic is quite the same. The better answer is this: the way we reach women is we reach millennial women by producing actual millennial men. If we give the men permission to be men, and they act like men, then everything else will take care of itself. It just is biology. You can have a guy who's, wearing the Obama t-shirt, and a couple of toughs come along, and it's like, oh man, we don't want to have any trouble. We're really down with the cause, the white man he's really dumped all over you, and we're really with you on this 100%. And if you're the girl standing there, you think, okay, well, he said all the right things, and now we just hope and pray that these guys don't beat the snot out of us. Or you can be harassed by somebody on the street and then have that boyfriend go, guys, I'm not looking for any trouble here, but if you're gonna hurt that girl, you're gonna have to kill me first. And look right him in the eyes. And then you tell me which one of those guys the girl's going to go for. Because I already know the answer to that question. So that's the plan. That's the out-of-the-box plan. And I'm going to do it one way or another. But it means that I'm going to have to start insisting on things that I spent 10 years asking for. I'm going to have to start insisting that people carry their own weight in this fight, because to do this takes a lot of creativity, but it takes a lot of money. And not a lot of money, it takes some money. And I don't have the money to do all of this. And so are we going to save this country, yes or no? I work on it 10, 12 hours a day. And 100 million people, on and off, have seen these videos, and a couple thousand people have paid for them. And when we were able to survive like that, we did. But they know the threat that we pose, and so they are taking action, and now we have to take action in return. All right, so let's have a look at some of these questions, because I promised I would do it. That's a happy coincidence. What are your concrete plans for turning this idea of video games into a viable business model that brings young people to the right? A lot of your backers are starting to worry their money's going to a fun distraction rather than something that's going to spread our message. Well, hopefully this helped you a little bit. These things go out for free. We're not allowed to make money on them. This, if you happen to stick around for the answer, Ian, I hope that did it for you. But if not, I can I got a whole lot more evidence. I could talk about the guardian angels and how they basically inspired young criminals to do the right thing, and the young criminals became young policemen overnight for a red hat to belong. Because you can't beat the biology out of people. So I'm the only person that I know of out here that's working with biology, with the biology of millennials. I'm not working against their heads. I'm not telling them that they should believe conservative ideas. I'm telling them, you know how you make 10 trips to that cave to kill that dragon so you can get 100 gold pieces so you can buy a bigger sword that you can kill a more expensive dragon with and make more gold pieces with? You know, those 8 hours a day you spend doing that? That's called working. It's called going to work. You own a company. So if anybody's going to reach them, that's going to do it. That's how they're going to reach them. Roy Hamill says, have you heard about positron dynamics? If it's, let's have a quick look. There's a link. Cool name, cool website. Antimatter propulsion, fantastic. I am down. It's not really a gaming issue, so we can take it next time. But that is a very cool website, and I had not heard of positron dynamics. But like X-Core and Blue Horizons and Bigelow and all the rest, it's private American citizens who are going to get us out of this, or else they won't. So I'll come back to that, Roy. If you want to bring it up, we'll do a space show. Eric Blake, hi, Bill Whittle, Lord Chancellor of the Aurora Star Republic. I am a simple civil servant who is elected to one term. So about the long apolitical Taylor Swift selling out to the left like she did in the midterms, I am somehow reminded of something a certain miserable lowlife whose name chronically escapes us says, artists first and foremost are working for love, not money. That's true. Here's the thing, the left has been pressuring Taylor to get woke for a while now, taunting her about how the 4chan crew deem her the Aryan goddess and whining about her not sufficiently supporting feminazi causes. Meanwhile, has she gotten any social media encouragement from the right? Any tweets from conservatives encouraging her to stay strong? Nothing. Nearly as big as the pressure from the lefties, most of whom I'm willing to bet don't listen to her songs. So with that in mind, is it in fact our own dang fault when celebrities who seem so promising sell out because we fail to support them? Yes. I just like to answer yes. That's perfectly expressed, perfectly thought out, exactly correct. What? You have to have a boy in the parade, right? There has to be one boy in the parade, one, who says he's not wearing any clothes. Somebody whose name is who's recognized, somebody big needs to say, Taylor, you're not only are you not a racist, you are just doing the world a whole lot of good. And if you want to reduce it to its bare bones, you are making so much damn money and paying so much in taxes that you're doing more for poor Americans than anybody out there who's working for any of these left-wing causes who are giving you all this nonsense. They're writing tweets. You're making money, and your money is going to help poor people. Do we do that? Of course not. Of course not. We are so bad at rhetorical intelligence. This is really the issue. Conservatives are much more rational, much more sensible, much more frugal, much more common sense. And they look at, it's kind of like the question I took a minute ago. And it doesn't bother me. It's just the world that I have to operate in. A lot of people think that you're going to be going off having fun playing computer games when there's real work to be done on the messaging. And I'm saying I'm going to have the messaging presented to millions of people who are going to be voting for 40 years, and they're not even going to know they're going to get the message. So it's going to cost me. It's already cost me. And it will continue to cost me. But I've never been so sure of anything in my life. That's why I'm here. I'm convinced. That's why I'm on the earth, is to do this. Mentioned earlier, Daily Wire, Crowder, Peterson, all of them are fighting a great fight, and they are holding the line. And they are winning some converts slowly, but mostly they're handing out ammunition to the conservatives who are out on college campuses and keeping them in the fight and keeping the idea of conservatism alive and shooting down the opposition. But they are frontline troops that are engaged in combat in the front lines. No one is going downstream. No one. No one is going behind the lines and simply cutting off the oil supply. I'm just going to cut off the social proof. They're going to have all the tanks they want to. We're going to make sure they don't get any gasoline. Not going to get any ammunition. That's the plan. Jake Costa re-asked, what's your vote for the best sci-fi show on TV streaming right now? I say it's The Expanse, but I know many people who say it's The Orville. I have to tell you, Jake, I haven't seen either one of those. I just refuse to watch The Orville. I'm sure it's very good. I just can't do it. Seth MacFarlane is just consciously. I just can't reward Seth MacFarlane. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. So I haven't seen it. I have seen bits of The Expanse. I like very much the idea of it being in the solar system. I like the idea of it being real propulsion, like the idea of bullets, all the rest of it, acceleration. That part of The Expanse I just love. But there's nobody on that show that I like. The crew doesn't seem to me to be... There doesn't seem to be... There's plenty of diversity in terms of diversity of skin color, but there's no chemistry that I can see. I've seen a couple of episodes for the effects. Somebody's going to tell me that it's absolutely fantastic. I've seen enough of it to feel like I'm just not interested in seeing much more of it. But I'm sure I felt that way about the new Battlestar Galactica and ended up binge watching all seasons of it. But that's a possibility. But in any event, I don't. I don't find myself captivated by it. It reminds me of like Above and Beyond and shows like that just haven't got. They're cool, but they don't have something about them. Is just not making the connection. They're not getting through. Paul Johnson, not a gaming question, but I've always been curious what you think of Chris Nolan's Interstellar. Did you like it? I did like it. I'm trying to remember what about it I didn't like, because there was a lot about it that I didn't like. I think there's something to do with the Matt Damon. I remember the things I didn't like about it. When they launched the rocket from the library, I wasn't much impressed. I just hated the robot, but I guess that doesn't make me unique. I thought the idea of being down on the planet where the time dilation in effect, I thought that was fantastic. Really good. Really clever idea. I thought the wormhole as that kind of reflective sphere, the black hole representation was tremendous. I thought the planets looked absolutely real and believable, and so did the ships. But by the time we got to Matt Damon, I was just, the whole backstory didn't make any sense to me. And I have to tell you, I am so sick of these Earth is dying stories. I mean, they're everywhere. Every science fiction movie, every single one of them starts out with, the Earth is dying, we've ruined our planet, we've killed the Earth, and now we must find another home. There's something coming up where they have to move to, they decide they're going to go live around Io, which has got the most radiation of any place in the entire solar system. They're going to go and move to Io because the Earth is too dangerous. Okay. So when I see Matt Damon, I can't get the politics of Matt Damon out of the picture, and that's the price that Matt Damon pays for thinking that fame is a vehicle for his political opinion instead of his acting talent, which is enormous. I just won't go. I don't watch it. So that's that. But I'll tell you what I did like about Interstellar. I saw just a little clip of it just a couple days ago, as a matter of fact. I only seen it once. But at the end of that, where they come back to the apartment, when he comes back to the apartment, the 4-dimensional apartment, I began to realize, I mean, obviously they're trying to show us 4 dimensions in 2 dimensions, not in 3. But the special effects were fantastic. And the idea that every single direction at any single moment was an infinite frame of possibilities, and that the frames went up and down and into the 4th dimension, I thought was great. And I've always thought that, you know, we're so limited. We think we think of infinity, but we also think that, well, if every single atomic state was different and it created a whole new universe, there's just simply no place to put them. You don't understand infinity. And it got me thinking, if you had a flatlander and you had a universe that was a circle, and this circle was 14 billion light years wide. If you were a flatlander, you would think that's a lot of room. But if you also told him that this universe went 14,000 light years up and down directions he can't get into, in other words, you could stack an infinite number of his universes one on top of the other, just stack them one on top of the other, then he'd just have a hard time following it. And I thought they did a real good job with that with Interstellar. Top fan, Steve Young. I have never done video games, and I've heard that newbies are not warmly welcomed into shooter games. We are a magnificent exception to that fact. You don't have to play the game. You don't have to be good at shooting. You really don't even need to play the game if you want to help out with the Aurora Republic. I have not found the What You Need information page at the Aurora Republic Ministry of Information. So what do our citizens and recruits need? I'm going to be having a conversation with known miscreant and the loudmouth about this in the very near future. Foghorn says, contact me, and the email address is aurora.republic.org@gmail.com. It is, in fact, a world where you do not have to play the game or own the game, and if you want to join the fun, you literally can just, buy a game package for, I don't know, is it $40, I guess? And then you can just walk on with us and just walk into a spaceship with us and come ride with us, and we'll do all the flying and all the shooting, and you'll see some cool things. Okay. Known miscreant Matt Lloyd, this will be the last question of the night, says, why do the Ace-1 Eagles the Ace-1 is Air Combat Element 1. It's the Eagle Squadron for the Aurora Republic. It's commanded by John Boyd. And Matt Lloyd is a fan of Ace-2, the Wolfpack. Why do the Ace-1 Eagles spend so much time fussing over their girlish looks? Is it true they have vanities and bidets installed in each Vanguard for maximum feminine hygiene, or are Eagles issued personal handheld douches? Well, that's a really good question, Matt, and it's funny you mention it, because I wasn't really going to do this, but now I think it's probably time. So let me show you what Matt's talking about here. Just give me 1 second here. Sorry, name. That doesn't make any sense. So I can see where he's going with this. So let me just show you something here, guys. Here's the commander of the Eagle Squadron. Wait, hey, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna take him out of here though. So that's the commander of the Eagle Squadron. That's really kind of nice. Works out pretty well. And his name is John Boyd. And as Times Judd points out, he thinks that the uniforms are effeminate, and in fact, he said that he thinks they look kind of gay, although not in a bad way. And he said that the Wolfpack, which wears red and black uniforms, is much tougher and much more manly. And so that's a compelling argument to join the Wolfpack. And so what we did was we hired a photographer and we got a body double for the commander of the wolf pack because he was out. I think he had a really bad ingrown toenail and he missed a week of combat on account of that. I forget his name now. It's a very unmemorable name. It's Ethan something or other. Anyway, he's the commander of the wolf pack, and he was basically saying that the eagles look kind of gay because they've got these kind of silver uniforms. So what we did was we went down to we got the person who looked most like Ethan that we could find, and we went down to shoot some publicity photos for the Eagles and for the Wolfpack both. And looking back on it, I realize it's probably a pretty good gauge of this theory and the uniform theory. So let me just remove this, and I'll show you some of the pictures that we took there just over the weekend. So I'm going to go to a black screen here. Hopefully the mic still works, and then I'll just drag these pictures in. Okay, there we go. Great. So we basically, as I said, we went down to a recruiting station at the mall, and we took a bunch of pictures. And so I'm going to just leave it up to you guys to decide whether, the Eagles look kind of gay because they're in their shiny uniforms, or whether, in fact, the black and red that Ethan advocates makes them look much more masculine. And this isn't Ethan, but this is the person who we found who looked closest to him. So let me see what I do with this here. Hang on. I was hoping that would come into scale, but it did not. So here's some of the pictures we took. And you can see how tough the black and red really look compared to the kind of the silver and the blue ones. So let me delete this. We took a few more just to see if we could get the point home. Come on, yes. So we went and we did a whole series of them. Here's another one where we're trying to decide, again, which one of these uniforms look better. I'm going to see if I can load it this way, and maybe it'll come in at the correct ratio. Hang on, yes, you. I'm going to give Bryos to you. So here's the second picture that we took. No, I have to scale this one too. Sorry, they're big pictures. Again, you can see that the black uniforms, the black and the red, provide a real kind of a masculine quality that I suppose are probably missing with our Eagle uniforms. We wanted to make sure we had all our bases covered, so I think we took a couple more. Let's see here. Here's one. Again, it's kind of tough, to be so badly outclassed because the toxic masculinity on the part of the wolf pack is really, it's just sometimes it's just more than we can handle. But you're absolutely right about that, Times Judge. You're right. The black and red is definitely got a manly quality to it that I could see would definitely, would appeal to you. I think we have two more. So might as well just show the entire series here while we're here. Okay, this is almost one of my favorites. I'll let this one sit for a second. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I personally think that the silver uniforms look kind of cool, but he may have a point about about the black and red being more butch. What is their call sign again? Oh, it's what's in the way. And I think we have one more. Let's get rid of this guy. So, for those of you who are out there playing along, it really is going to be a question of you deciding what you really want to do character-wise. And I know, just speaking for myself, that I personally like the silver and the blue because they're the colors of the Aurora Republic. They're the colors of high altitude. Oh, I just did that one. Sorry. Let me bring that one. Bring in the next one. That was my mistake. Where is it? So I leave it up to the reader to decide, the viewer. But basically, here we go. Here's the last one. So you do have a choice of which squadron you decide you want to join in the Aurora Republic. So if you do decide that you're one of those people who don't normally play the game and you'd like to play the game, you've got your choice between the presumably kind of gay-looking eagles, or the black and red of the wolf pack. So I think I'll just leave you with that image. It's pretty much your choice. I kind of prefer the eagles personally, but I just don't have the same taste in clothes and colors that the wolf pack has, and I certainly don't know how to pose as well as they do. Hey, Foggy, can you send me the link to the? Can you resend that link to the cyclone jump thing? We actually are. We wear these colors because we stay up high. We shoot down enemy targets at 4 or 5 kilometers, and we don't roll in the mud like a bunch of yapping puppies that have rolling around in their own stuff. All right, I got to download this Foghorn, so give me a second here. In any event, you can look at that picture for a moment while I get this thing downloaded, and that'll do it for the day here, but we will have a chance to see this. This was put together, also a fun little thing that we do just for giggles here. By the way, I just want to point out that this, for those of you who may be watching on Media Matters, this is, what you're looking at here is not a question of gay. It's just a question of fabulousness. And I think I can say with a fair amount of confidence that the Wolfpack is the most fabulous squadron in the entire Republic. Okay, so let's see, where's it? YouTube Ripper, run this, and then we'll call it a night. But this is the kind of fun that we have online, and it's nice to be able to have some fun and save the country. And as usual, the problem with, see, if I had an engineer, it's the space bar. it's the space bar. I keep hitting the space bar, and that mutes the microphone. I might want to think about changing that that hotkey. What's going on here? Okay, this was one of the most disjointed shows ever, and nevertheless, there we are. We're back, and we do have a lot of fun out there. So I suppose until next time, we will do something different, and presumably I'll get a little bit more sleep. So until then, thanks very much for joining us. It was real and it was fun, but it wasn't real fun. It's always real fun. Thank you very much to the members that make this possible, and we have good things coming your way. And I think he's finally left now, that no good for nothing Scott out layabout sluggard. Yeah, anyway, I'm just completely babbling now, which is pretty much par for the course. See you next week.